The notice requirement provided for the open public meeting law has been satisfied. Notice was properly given, said notice having been transmitted to the Courier News on January 12th, 2022, as well as a posting on the city's website. Good evening, everybody. Mr. Clerk, may I have a roll call, please?
Council members Briggs Jones.
Present.
Davis.
Present.
Hockaday.
Present.
McKenna.
Present.
Mills Ransom. Councilwoman Mills Ransom, can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I muted myself. Okay, present here.
Vice President McCray.
Present.
Council President Good.
Present.
We have all members present in a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. May I have a motion to approve the following minutes as presented? Of course, those minutes would be from the combined session of April 11, 2022. Is there a motion, please?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? The combined session from April 11th is approved, 2022. Now we have our discussion items. We have a guest with us on this evening, someone who I had the pleasure of meeting, I believe it was last month, and she's here to give a presentation on Mental Health Awareness Month, which we all know that this is the month for it, and her name is Mrs. Beverly Moore Clark. Let's give it up for Beverly Moore Clark. We welcome you on this evening, and the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Councilman Good. It's truly appreciated. I'm going to get right to the point, be brief, because I know you guys at the end of the workday, there's long meetings, and sometimes it's like it could be a little too much, but I'm going to try to be as informative as I can in a short period of time to kind of educate you guys, all right? All right, so again, my name is Beverly Moore Clark. My married name is Stevenson. So in the community, people know Beverly Moore Clark, but slowly I'm transferring over to Stevenson. So again, I am happy to be here to present to you all. I'm a licensed social worker, and I have over 30 years of experience in the field. I've worked predominantly with the adult population. I've overseen different programs within the community. And I currently have my own business, BMC Counseling and Consulting, where our mission is to help individuals in the community live a healthy and successful life by providing mental health counseling and guidance. So I do presentations, we do therapy. So I work with students as well in regards to internships. So anything where we can enhance the quality of life for individuals in the community, that's what we do. I'm going to start by first discussing wellness, right? Many of you have heard that term wellness. Okay, many may not know that there are different forms of wellness, right? In regards to taking care of oneself. So there are 7 dimensions. Some of you may have heard about this. There's 7 dimensions of wellness in regards to taking care of you or either taking care of others, depending on how we want to look at it. The first one is called intellectual, where we are educating ourselves, right? We do different things, whether that means going to college, whether that means reading books, whether that means watching the news. We do something to educate ourselves, something to keep us in tune. The second dimension is occupation, whether that means working, right? We have working goals, we have things we want to accomplish to enhance our quality of life. So we have intellectual, and then we have occupational. The third one is social. Now, many of us may interact in the community. We may go out and hang out with our friends. We may sit back and listen to some music and relax. Some of us are part of different fraternities, sororities, or even other organizations where we want to have some type of socialization, where we want to enhance our social skills, where we go out and you know, intertwine with people in the community. The next one is environmental, where we may do some things at home, where we want to, you know, we may buy a new home or move to a new apartment and we want to decorate that apartment, right? We want to fix things up. We want to make things look nice, or even just something that's cleaning our home, or even cleaning out our car, right? We want the environment to be presentable. We want it to be our space. We want it to be comfortable for us. The next one is spiritual. Now, many people are associated with different type of religious organizations, right? And you do that as a sense of belonging, sense of kind of taking care of you spiritually. Many of us pray. There's different denominations of, of religions and how we pray. But at the end of the day, we join different religious organizations. We pray. Many of us focus on a higher power. We have faith, and we talk about that faith building. Because of why we do that, because we want inside, we want to have faith that things are going to be right. Things are going to happen our way. So that's a form of taking care of ourselves. We're having some self-belief, believing in a higher power. The next one is what we all most familiar about is physical wellness, right? So we know we need to eat healthy. We know we need to exercise. We need to take them walks. We need to get good sleep. We need to do something to take care of our body, our temple, right? Because if we don't, we know we only have one body. If we don't take care of it, it could be problems. We don't want all those other problems associated with not eating properly. So we take care of ourselves. And the seventh dimension is emotional, right? We want to talk about self-care. We want to like ourselves. We want to love ourselves. We want to take care of ourselves. And how do we do that? We do that in many different ways. Some people may journal. Some people may have a spa day where they're working on mind and body. Some people do self-talk. Some people just are in tune to their feelings. The bottom line is that we're focusing on our mind, right? Emotional is focused on our mind, how we feel, our perception, how we think. Again, our mind. So this is what I'm going to focus on today, our mind. My goal is to provide education regarding mental health to the community as it's Mental Health Awareness Month. So the definition of mental health. It is an illness or disorder that can cause some sort of illness, disturbance, either behavior or psychological. These disturbances are labeled as some sort of disorder. These disorders often affect our mood, thinking, and behavior. So a person can be depressed, anxious, and hearing voices, and may even see things that aren't really there. They may display manic behavior. In addition, there are some may have substance-induced disorders, meaning that the substance abuse problem caused some other problem. Like you hear people say that they have psychosis, right? That things have happened. Some, the younger generation, they may have abused some type of marijuana that was laced with something, and then they experience psychosis. So these are called substance-induced psychosis, meaning that the drug has caused the person to not be in touch with reality. So now, myths. Many believe that someone diagnosed with a mental illness is harmful, right? You hear someone that says, oh, I don't want to be by them, or I'm gonna walk on the other side of the street because they're responding to voices. You feel that, or people feel that somebody may try to, that this person may try to hurt them. Many times someone with a mental illness is actually afraid of you. Many may be afraid of them in the community, but they're actually afraid of you. They have all this internal stimuli going on. And to add to everything else, they're questioning the people around them as well. So, whether it's depression, anxiety, delusions, which are false impressions or fears, there's some type of symptomology that they may have. Just because they have a mental illness, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are harmful. It's as if a senior that has Alzheimer's, which destroys the memory and other mental functions. Majority of the time, there's far and few where we are pretty much afraid of a senior with Alzheimer's. So it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Stereotypes. The most common stereotypes that exist pertain to, again, people with mental illness, feeling that they're dangerous, violent, or even incompetent. People also commonly believe that mental illness is caused by a character flaw or poor upbringing. You know, I've heard people say, you know, their mother has been on drugs, there's something wrong with them, or that someone must have dropped their baby. You know, sometimes we say things in joking, you know, in joking manner, but a lot of times people sometimes mean what they say, even though they're saying it in a joking manner. This is certainly not the case. Many people are battling mental illness. You know, they're able to function in society. They're just like you and me. They have successful careers. They have a lot going on for themselves. They have families. With the right community supports, whether that's medication management, meaning they're seeing a psychiatrist, or even therapy, where they're seeing someone such as myself, they can function in a community just like we are. We live with mental illness every day, or we know someone that lives with mental illness every day. So what do we do about this? Encourage those who have been diagnosed to see a prescriber. Many believe that a lot of people need medication. Some do need medications to help cope with the mental illness, but there are many that do not. For those that don't, they may need to learn how to use different coping mechanisms. Second is that you want to encourage people who are diagnosed with a mental illness to seek a therapist. Again, depending on the diagnosis, not everybody requires the same thing, but if they are going for med management and it's determined that's not needed, they will guide them in the right direction, meaning as a psychiatrist. If they are going for therapy, therapy may be needed. Some diagnoses that may benefit from therapy are depression, bipolar, generalized anxiety. Someone that's been diagnosed with schizophrenia, therapy may not be for them. They're, you know, diagnosed with a severe and persistent mental illness, and they may not be able to process. So for those that may not be able to process, therapy may not work for them. We have to look at each individual as an individual and individualized treatment based on what will work for them. The third thing I want to bring up is family supports. You want to get the family involved. If you have a family member that's been diagnosed with a mental illness, you want to get involved. You want to ensure that there's a clear understanding of the illness so that you know how to help the person. If you don't have understanding of the illness, then you're going to be a little reserved. You're going to be a guardian. You're going to be a little paranoid because you're not sure how to deal with the person. So for example, if someone in your family is diagnosed with social anxiety, and there's a family cookout coming up, it could be, you know, a family reunion. That person with social anxiety will not want to be at that family reunion, will not. So one thing you may want to do is maybe compromise with the person. So if the person is going to go to the location where the family reunion is, that person may be able to be maybe in the hotel room or inside the home if it's outside, but if something's outside, that person will not be able to handle being outside. So you don't want to try to force that person to do something that is going to raise anxiety and a level of uncomfortability. They can be in another room in the house where they can hear the music playing, hear people talking and laughing. They can come get their food and go back, but they're not going to be able to hang out outside and laugh and joke and dance. That's not going to happen. Community supports. Oftentimes, community supports are needed as if the person has a severe mental illness. I mean, they need that support, no matter whether it's severe or not. They need support. This means different things. They may be able to do certain things on their own, but you want community support, whether that means that they have some, you know, some other facilities that help them out, some people that come into the home. You know, everybody are not able to take care of themselves. So for those that's not able to take care of themselves, you want to get them support that they need to guide them. There's a lot of in-home services that can be provided to help someone. So I'm going to talk briefly about some supports so that, you know, you guys can have a clear picture of what I'm referring to. For example, if someone needs help, they may need financial help when I say community supports, which means that the person may not have finances. They may need to apply for general assistance, food stamps, or even Social Security. So this could help. General assistance and food stamps can help them in the interim, maybe until they get back on their feet, till they start working, or if they're not able to work, they need to apply for Social Security. so they can have some type of income. They need financial assistance. Many of them may need subsidized housing. They may not be able to afford rent for $1,800 a month. They may be only be able to afford a rent for $600 a month. So we need to help them. There's organizations that can help them get subsidized housing. Many of them may need help with utilities as well. So if they need that help, there's resources out there to help them for that. And there's resources out there to help people get jobs. There's different programs out there. So for people that are capable of working, maybe have some anxiety with interviewing, things of that nature, there are programs out there that can help them. There are some resources in Union County that some of you may heard of that can help. There's called Amity Healthcare Services, which is located on Morris Avenue in Union. They provide counseling and medication management. There's the YMCA that offers support as well. There's also an agency called United Family and Children's Society, where they focus on the family as a whole. And they also focus on the Spanish population. So if you know, a Spanish, speaking family, that especially if they rarely speak English, this is the place for them to go to. Some of you may have heard of Family Support Organization, which is on Park Avenue. There's also Serve Behavioral Health System, which assists individuals in regards to residential services. And there's Bridgeway House, which helps people in the community as well. Bridgeway has a host of different services in Union County, where there's housing, employment, outpatient, day program, case management, homelessness. They help with everything. If someone's in crisis, which means that, you're not sure, something's not right, you suspect they may be a danger to themselves or others, you want to get them to the crisis center, which is we call it the psych emergency room. And I believe the one nearest to you guys will be located in Broadway. And again, for those that need counseling, you can refer them to me for BMC Counseling and Consulting. There's two other that I want to mention. If someone has an issue with domestic violence, there's resources out there that I'm quite sure you guys already know about for them. And there's also Plainfield Action Services that help them with utility bills, housing, finances, food, and any basic needs. So there's a lot of resources out here in the county, in the area, that can assist individuals in need. So to conclude, many are diagnosed with mental illness. There are very few that need long-term hospitalization, because the goal in the mental health field is you want to have people live in the community successfully. So the goal is not to have someone hospitalized for 10 years or even a year. The goal, if possible, is to provide services to them in the community. Majority are able to successfully function in the community with the right supports. The key is understanding the illness, how to treat it, and how to provide support to the individual. I hope this brief presentation was helpful. And please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Beverly Clark. Does anyone have any questions for her? Ms. Clark, would you be so kind as to give your contact information for my colleagues or any of those that are listening that would like to reach out at another time for those resource numbers? We are fully equipped here in the city of Plainfield. I'm pretty sure Director Shep Brown will agree. But there are some things that you have mentioned that maybe members of the public would like to take advantage of those resources that you mentioned. So that being said, if you could supply your email information and a number that they could call to get that.
Okay, my telephone number is 908-723-5420. And my email address is altogether BMC Counseling and Consulting @gmail.com. Again, it's BMC Counseling and Consulting @gmail.com.
Thank you so much. We thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us here tonight with all of those resources and you were equipped with a lot of information. So thank you so much.
Not a problem. If anybody needs anything else, and I'm only a phone call away. Thank you for having me.
Have a good night. Thank you again. Okay, at this time, we're going to move to an open public hearing on the budget for this calendar year. And I'm going to ask if you wish to be heard to raise your hand, and each person that wishes to be heard, we ask that you supply your name and address for the record. We would like to make sure that any of your comments or questions are addressed only to the budget and the budget onlys. So that being said, the floor is now open for public hearing on the budget. Good evening, Ms. Owens. Your name and address for the record. I believe that's one of our CVAC members. You're muted, Ms. Owens.
I didn't have a question. I accidentally put my hand up. I have it
Okay.
reload, but
Well, it's a great hand, and we're going to move right along, okay?
thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Is there anyone else? Okay, if there is no one else, motion to close public hearing.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Public hearing on this year's budget is now closed. We're now going to move to consideration of public hearing, second reading and final passage. Mr.
Council
Clerk,
President, just a real quick question before we start. If you don't mind, can I get clarity on the bond numbers? Because I think they're incorrect. Again, I believe they're 1258, 12, I'm sorry, 1258, 1259.
Mr. Clerk,
What was the question?
The bond numbers, we had an error with them the last time, but I think they're still showing the last bond number.
Give me 1 second.
I believe if my notes are correct.
Yeah, I had, and I'll resend it right now. I had sent out an email to the council explaining the errors, and these are correct.
that email, if I'm wrong, went out last week, didn't it?
Correct.
Yes,
I
it
didn't see
did.
that. So then when we clarified last week that they were 1258, 1259, they're not 1258, 1250. They're 1276 and 1277.
It was 1275 that was erroneously put as 1257. So it was 1275 that was incorrect, which caused the other ones to be incorrect. So these are correct. It's 1275, 1276, 1277.
Okay, thank
Mr.
you.
Clerk,
I'll just resend the email.
please read MC 2022-16. Title and further certify that the ordinance has complied with all statutory publication requirements.
MC 2022-16 is an ordinance authorizing and encouraging electric vehicle supply, service equipment, and make-ready parking spaces and amending the penalties for non-compliant parking. It is hereby certified that notice of the public hearing on this ordinance was published in the Courier News on April 22nd, 2022.
The floor is now open to any member of the public who would like to speak on this particular ordinance and this one only. With there being none, may I have a motion to close the public hearing on this ordinance?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay. May I have a motion to adopt this ordinance on second reading and final passage? And if adopted, the ordinance shall be published as required by law.
Moved. Second.
Mr. Clerk, may I have a roll call, please?
Council members Briggs Jones,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hockaday,
Yes.
McKenna,
Yes,
Mills Ransom,
Yes.
Vice President McCray,
Yes.
Council President Good.
Yes.
This ordinance has been adopted on second reading and final passage.
Mr. Clerk, please read MC 2022-17, title, and further certify that the ordinance has complied with all statutory publication requirements.
MC 2022-17 is an ordinance of the city of Plainfield in the county of Union, New Jersey, enacting amendments to the TODD West redevelopment plan. It is hereby certified that the notice of the public hearing on this ordinance was published in the Courier News on April 22nd, 2022.
The floor is now open to any member of the public who would like to speak on this ordinance. With there being none, may I have a motion to close public hearing on this ordinance?
Moved.
Seconded.
May I have a motion to adopt this ordinance on second reading and final passage, and if adopted, the ordinance shall be published as required by law.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Clerk, may I have a roll call, please?
Council members Briggs Jones,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hockaday,
Yes.
McKenna,
Yes.
Mills Ransom,
Yes.
Vice President McCray,
Yes.
Council President Good.
Yes.
That is unanimous. This ordinance has been adopted on second reading and final passage.
Clerk, would you read MC 2022-18, title, and further certify that the ordinance has complied with all statutory publications along with the requirements?
MC 2022-18 is an ordinance of the city of Plainfield in the county of Union, authorizing a supplement to Plainfield City Code, section 20:1-1, cannabis transfer tax and user tax. It's hereby certified that the notice of the public hearing on this ordinance was published in the Courier News on April 22nd, 2022.
The floor is also now open to any member of the public who would like to speak on this particular ordinance. May I have a motion to close public hearing on this ordinance?
So moved.
Is there a second? I second. And may I have a motion to adopt this ordinance on second reading and final passage? And if adopted, the ordinance shall be published as required by law.
So moved.
Second.
Clerk, may I have a roll call, please?
Council members Briggs Jones,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hockaday,
Yes.
McKenna,
Yes.
Mills Ransom,
Yes.
Vice President McCray,
Yes.
Council President Good.
Yes.
That is unanimous. This ordinance has been adopted on second reading and final passage.
MC 2022, please read the title and further certify that the ordinance has been complied with all statutory publication requirements. Mr. Clerk.
MC 2022-19 is an ordinance to amend Chapter 16A-2, Vehicles and Traffic, Schedule 2, No Parking Certain Hours under the Municipal Code of the City of Plainfield, New Jersey, 1972. It's hereby certified that the notice of public hearing on this ordinance was published in the Courier News on April 22nd, 2022.
Floor is now open to any member of the public who would like to speak on this ordinance. May I have a motion to close public hearing on this ordinance?
So moved. Seconded.
May I have a motion to adopt this ordinance on second reading and final passage? And if it's adopted, this ordinance shall be published as required by law.
So moved. Seconded.
Mr. Clerk.
Council members Briggs Jones,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hockaday,
Yes.
McKenna,
Yes.
Mills Ransom,
Yes.
Vice President McCray,
Yes.
Council President Good.
Yes.
That is unanimous. This ordinance has been adopted on second reading and final passage.
Mr. Clerk, please read MC 2022-20 title and further certify that the ordinance has complied with all statutory publications and requirements.
MC 2022-20 is an ordinance repealing and deleting Chapter 9, Section 15:1 through 15 through 104 of the Plainfield Municipal Code.
Floor is now open to any member of the public who would like to speak on this ordinance. Is there a motion to close public hearing on this ordinance?
So moved.
Any second? May I have a motion to adopt this ordinance on second reading and final passage? And if it's adopted, the ordinance shall be published as required by law.
So moved. Seconded.
Mr. Clerk.
Council members Briggs Jones,
Yes.
Davis,
No.
Hockaday,
Yes.
McKenna,
Yes.
Mills Ransom,
yes,
Vice President McCray,
Yes.
Council President Good.
Yes.
6 in favor, 1 opposed. This ordinance has been adopted on second reading and final passage.
Clerk, please read Bond 1276 title and further certify that the ordinance has complied with all statutory publication requirements.
Bond ordinance 1276 is a bond ordinance providing for various 2022 acquisitions and improvements by and for the parking utility of the city of Plainfield and the county of Union, state of New Jersey, appropriating $200,577 thereof and authorizing the issuance of $191,025 bonds or notes to the city to finance part of the cost thereof. It is hereby certified that the notice of the public hearing on this bond ordinance was published in the Courier News on April 22nd, 2022.
The floor is now open to any member of the public who would like to speak on this ordinance. There being none, may I have a motion to close public hearing on this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
May I have a motion to adopt this ordinance on second reading and final passage, and if adopted, the ordinance shall be published as required by law.
Moved. Seconded.
Mr. Clerk?
Moved by Vice President McCray, seconded by Councilman Hockaday. Roll call, council members Briggs Jones,
yes,
Councilwoman Davis,
Yes.
Councilman Hockaday,
Yes.
Councilman McKenna,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mills Ransom,
yes,
Vice President McCray,
Yes.
Council President Good.
Yes.
That is unanimous. This bond ordinance has been adopted on second reading and final passage.
Clerk, please read Bond 1277 title and further certify that the ordinances comply with all statutory publications and requirements.
Bond ordinance 1277 is a bond ordinance providing for various 2022 capital acquisitions and improvements by and in the city of Plainfield in the county of Union, state of New Jersey, and appropriating $4,387,777 thereof, and authorizing the issuance of $4,178,335 bonds or notes for the city to finance part of the cost thereof. It's hereby certified that this bond ordinance was published in the Courier News on April 22nd, 2022.
Floor is now open to any member of the public who would like to speak on this particular ordinance. There being none, is there a motion to close public hearing?
moved,
Seconded.
May I have a motion to adopt this ordinance on second reading and final passage, and if adopted, the ordinance shall be published as required by law.
So moved.
Seconded.
Mr. Clerk?
Council members Briggs Jones,
yes,
Davis,
Yes.
Hockaday,
Yes.
McKenna,
Yes.
Mills Ransom,
yes,
Vice President McCray,
Yes.
Council President Good.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Appreciate you. Public comment limited to resolutions and motions and ordinances to be introduced on its first reading. A total of 30 minutes has been allocated for public comments limited to resolutions and ordinances being considered this evening. If you wish to be heard, please hit the hand icon to be recognized and you will be unmuted. Once unmuted, please give your name and address for the record. Each speaker will be giving 3 and only 3 minutes. The floor is now open. Romero, your name and address for the record, please. Z Romero, your name and
Hi.
address for the record.
Good evening. Sorry, trouble
Good evening. That's
unmuting.
that's okay.
Apologies.
Good evening.
You would think at this point we would have gotten it.
It's okay.
It's Z Romero. I'm at 1216 Watchung Avenue. Thank you for hearing me. My comment is actually to Mrs. Stevenson, who I'm sorry dropped off. I really appreciate that you're acknowledging the mental health awareness. And I believe that's part of the legislature body that you're going to speak to. One of the things I wanted to just call out was I do appreciate her identifying the multiple dimensions, which included social anxiety, which is linked to environmental and emotional health. And what I wanted to bring to the attention is that home is your sanctuary to become healthy. You eat well, you are with your family, you want to feel safe, you want to feel rested. And for me, it's very challenging to feel that way when we're constantly accosted by noise from vehicles with altered mufflers, revving sports cars, motorcycles, commercial vehicles, dirt bikes, ATVs, and loud literally heart-shaking music being blasted all hours of the night. My question is, how can we rest if you're jolted awake at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning? Or as you're just about to fall asleep, you're awoken by either a loud car or music. And what is the noise ordinance or Plainfield? How can it be enforced? What steps can be made to cut down on this? Can you use noise meters on cameras that capture license plates so fines can be issued? And as the weather gets warmer, this is only going to intensify. So that was really just my comment on mental health awareness. How do we, we're acknowledging it. Now let's take action to make it better. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else? Manuela Garcia, thank you for joining us.
Hi,
Your name and address for the record, please.
Manuela Garcia. I am the Executive Director of United Family and Children's Society. Our address is 305 West 7th Street in Plainfield, New Jersey, 07060. And I'm speaking on behalf of the Park Hotel Resolution. Currently, the Executive Director for the agency for the past 3 years. And I have a couple of notes that I jotted down so you guys know. I want to thank Miss Beverly Moore Clark. I've worked with her for 15 plus years in the field of mental health. She did a very good presentation. It is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I'm happy to speak on behalf for the United Family on behalf of the Park Hotel. We've been working with the Park Hotel for 42 plus years. We provide the community service program. We have 4 mental health associates that go in and out of the Park Hotel. We actually have a space in the Park Hotel, and we help the 160 to 180 residents of the Park Hotel be able to manage and get the services they need. There's currently, right now to date, 168. We do not own or operate the Park Hotel. However, we help facilitate the social service aspect of it. In the 168 residents throughout the pandemic, all those residents were vaccinated and fully boosted. They also have been able to get the flu shot. In the past 3 years, the residents also that I've been working with my staff have been able to get jobs, and some of those residents are artists, they're local artists, they're also craftsmen. They're also people who suffer from mental health and substance abuse disorders and are receiving treatment in the community that we live in Plainfield. We have residents that 30 to 40% of our residents that we work with there have lived at Park Hotel 20 to 30 years. Their family are from Plainfield, New Jersey, and their home is the Park Hotel. So 30 to 40% of those residents that live in that facility have been living there their whole life, 20 to 30 years. There is 1 out of every 5th person in the state of New Jersey that has mental health issues. And current to date, there's probably more, because right now, United States, we're in a mental health crisis, as Beverly had discussed previously. So we urge that this is looked at and considered. In concluding, what I want to say is that I think that we should consider this resolution, and hopefully it'll be looked at more carefully, because we want to help these people and these individuals that we work with. They have their rights to live where they want to live, and a residential healthcare facility is a good place to live in. And I've seen several different ones in my 25 years working in mental health and substance abuse. I feel that it is it's not the best place, but it is one of the better places in New Jersey for.
Council President, speaker time is up.
Ms. Garcia, thank you so much for chiming in on tonight. We appreciate your comments. Thank you. Cynthia Summer, your name and Atwell. Your name and address for the record, please. Ms. Summer, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself, please? Ms. Summer.
Hello,
Thank
can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thanks for joining us. Your comment, please.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
I just want to first of all say thank you to all the council members for your hard work. And I did come in about 5 minutes ago, so I apologize for that. But my name is Cynthia Sumner, and I reside at 1424 East Front Street in Plainfield, New Jersey. This is my father's home. He's 81 years old, and he's lived in the community here at this residence for over 40 years. And I came in, I guess, just at the right time, because I have written a letter to my representative, Ms. Davis, about the noise pollution down here on East Front Street in terms of cars racing up and down for East Front Street, 2nd Street. At times, it sounds like the Indy 500 raceway. And I'm not exaggerating. My dad, you know, he takes a lot of pride in his home. He's been a Plainfield resident for about 60 years. He's 81 years old now. And I am blessed to be able to live upstairs from him. So I'm close, so I can keep an eye on him. There's other seniors in this area down here on East Front Street, close to Terrell Road as well. And there's a lot of new families in the area too. And that's great. And this is a great area. And I think I owe it to my dad to kind of advocate on his behalf. I just want to see, some representation down here in terms of the police and, stopping these cars with illegal motors. Like the other person had said when I jumped on, as soon as you get ready to lay your head down to go to bed at 9:30 at night, because you have to get up and go to work in the morning, you got cars, racing up and down the street. So in my letter that I wrote to Ms. Davis, I also said that I want to be a part of the solution. I'd like to start a block association down here. And I was at City Hall today on my lunch break and got some guidance as to, going to the clerk and seeing how I can get familiar with the ordinances in terms of noise, in terms of putting up TVs in your backyard, big screen TVs in your backyard, and, things that are going on in the neighborhood. We just want to keep it, quiet and quaint, the way my dad has had it for over 40 years since he's been here. So that's my input. And like I said, I want to be a part of the solution. And thank you again for allowing me to speak.
Ms. Summer, thank you so much for calling in, and we appreciate your comments.
Council President, if I could just be heard very briefly.
Of course, go right ahead, Mr. Mincello.
Just reminding the council and all potential speakers that this section is specific to ordinances and resolutions, and that there will be a section at the end of the meeting for any individual who wants to speak on a comment of public concern. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Ferrone, Elizabeth Ferrone, your comment, is it in regards to resolutions on tonight?
Yes, 190-22.
Go right ahead. Your name and address. Your name and address, please.
Elizabeth Ferrone, 320 West 38th Street, New York, New York. Can I have 5 minutes to speak?
3.
3. The Planning Division is asking the City Council to allow them to do a redevelopment investigation of Grace Episcopal Church located on 7th Street and Cleveland Avenue. Grace is on the National Registry of Historic Places and is also on the state and local historic registries. Among the many churches in Plainfield, the 3 most architecturally significant are Grace Episcopal Church, Crescent Avenue Presbyterian Church, and Seventh-day Baptist Church. They add immensely to the culture and landscape of Plainfield. The City Council should never give permission to the Planning Division to do a redevelopment investigation on any of these properties. Instead, church authorities should partner with the organization called Partners for Sacred Places, which has had great success in saving important buildings across our nation over the past 30 years. Barbara Habib and I have met with Partners for Sacred Places, and they have agreed to work with Plainfield to preserve the Grace Church building. It is vitally important that Plainfield City Council be a beacon of light and save the art interiors and exteriors of our most precious buildings. I am hoping that you will respect the architects, craftsmen, and community members of the built Grace Church. And in the future, you will work hard to establish laws that will preserve the valuable interiors of Plainfield buildings. Now, I need the City Council to pay very careful attention to what I'm about to say. If the City Council votes yes for the redevelopment inspection, they are unwittingly voting for demolition of the building. The buyer of Grace Church intends to demolish and build no less than 175 apartments. I saw a draft of the confidential agreement in early April. The city would not pay for an expensive investigation if they didn't intend to claim the building should be condemned and demolished. I know the building is very stable and should not be condemned and demolished, but the city's investigation may tell you something else. I have seen the recent inspection report paid for by the diocese, and it does not recommend demolition. It recommends repairs and restoration. There is no need for the city to do an investigation. They can read the investigation report, now the report. So if what I've said to you tonight confuses you, please refrain from voting tonight and do your research. Ask for the agreement between the buyer and the seller. We've lost many gorgeous churches in the downtown area 60, 70, 80 years ago because of new development. And we must not repeat past mistakes. This church is precious. It has a very large carillon that provides music to the community. It's adorned with 51 or more fine original stained glass windows. Until recently, 8 panels of beautiful Tiffany stained glass windows were removed. These Tiffany windows are standouts even among the work of Tiffany, and they are comparable to the Tiffany stained glass windows that are on permanent display at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. They were donated by the Tweedy sisters and Dexter Tiffany Jr., who lived on Crescent Avenue. Dexter was a cousin of Louis Comfort Tiffany, and that explains why the most accomplished artisans in Tiffany Studio created these exceptional windows. They must be returned to the city of Plainfield. So please do not let the music, art, architecture, and community space of Grace Church be taken from Plainfield. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. We appreciate that. Is there anyone else? Mr. Pittus, your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is David Pittus, and I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Good evening.
Good evening. Some of you may recognize the name Pittus. My family lived in Plainfield for over 100 years and had a business with many commercial stores downtown. And I myself lived on Front Street for over 10 years. Now, my family donated the money for the restoration of the carillon in Grace Church in the late 1970s. And I myself fabricated the carillon, and my father, Walter Pittus, designed it. And I have to say, my grandmother financed it, and the Pittus estate, which owned the properties downtown, they financed it also. And I have to say that, a historical artifact like Grace Church and its corresponding carillon and Tiffany windows and other stained glass windows are more than just the building. They're all the people who contributed to the community over generations. And by wiping away Grace Church, you essentially are destroying some of their memory. I'm not just for the family members, or not just the people who might be buried there. I can attest that the carillon at Grace Church is one of the finest in the United States. It surely is barely used. And I understand that there's many problems with Grace Church itself and the cost of restoring it. But I've asked the community of Plainfield, for my father and his father, to think very, very seriously before you destroy this wonderful instrument that had such a place in their hearts. And I can say that I really want you to find a way, and I don't have a solution, to keep it in use and for the community, more than just the adjacent community. This is a wonderful instrument in Plainfield, and to somehow give it up, and the church itself, the instrument is not a secular thing. It can be used by everybody in every religion or non-religion. So this is what I plea to this community, which I lived in and my father was born in and lived in and served very well. Anybody who knows our name would know that. There's only one of those generation alive today, and that's Albert Pittus. He used to run the art shows on Front Street. And by destroying Grace Church, I can say that would be a great insult to my family. And so please consider it very seriously before removing the historical classification of Grace Church, which just seems a bit outrageous considering that when you make a historical classification, it's assumed that it will be retained in the future, not just given away for a developer to make some money.
Council President, the speaker time is up.
Mr. Pittus, thank you so much. Thank you for your comment. Mr. Shaw, your name and address for the record, please. Mr. Shaw, you're muted. Can you unmute yourself? Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Andrew Shaw, and I live at 1341 Prospect Avenue.
Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on this resolution about Grace Church. And I just wanted to say that we've only lived in Plainfield for, I guess, about 6 years now. But one of the things that attracted us to this community is the beautiful architecture, where everywhere you look, you can just walk down the streets and you see beautiful buildings, of whether private homes or municipal buildings or churches. And so to me, it seems like it would be a very bad thing to remove any of this. And it will reduce the attractiveness of what I think is the aptly named Queen City. And so for that reason, I would really like to strongly urge that you not put this up for redevelopment. And in fact, I know housing is an issue, but to look into alternatives whereby the church can be repurposed even for housing as is. I know that's done in other places. But certainly to demolish it, to erect an apartment building that one you can build anywhere is I think would be a great mistake, because once it's gone, it's gone. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Mary, your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, your name and address
Mr. Hood,
for the record.
139 East 7th Street.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. Just to follow up with the last three speakers and Elizabeth Ferrone, I'm just getting word of this now, earlier today, but about Grace Church. I'm generally opposed to redeveloping this property. It was designated as a national historic site for a reason. Like I said, I'm just getting word of this. I have to do some more research, but 1 to 2 blocks away on 5th and Cleveland, there are multiple properties there, multiple locations that are available for rent and or purchase. I think that would be a much better choice to redevelop those. And if you would have wanted to put an apartment building up to use those properties on 5th and Cleveland, there's an old Cadillac dealership, an old Bradford, Tiffany Bradford, and her father had an auto body shop. I think that's a much better location. It's closer to the train station. It's within, a 2-minute walk of the Plainfield train station. It's an excellent location for people wanting to commute to work in any location in New Jersey or New York City. So I'm generally opposed to this redevelopment, reconstruction of Grace Church on 7th Street and Cleveland. Yeah.
Ms. Miller, your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Bernadette Miller, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee. My family, however, lived in Plainfield for over 50 years, the last one having left just a few months ago. And Grace Church was an important part of my family's history. Grace Church has a memory garden in which are the remains of my mother, my father, and my sister. My mother, Connie Ferroni, was a very active member of Plainfield's community. She fought for civil rights and for the education of all our children. My sister, Heather, who is also there in the ground at Grace Church, died of leukemia as a result of volunteering at the 9/11 cleanup site. There are many other notable people in the ground there, and I think that disturbing that ground would actually be sacrilege. These families expected for their loved ones to remain there at that church site and for that church to remain. I would also like to mention that a petition was put up in opposition of the destruction of Grace Church barely a week ago. And in that one short week and with very small circulation, quickly garnered almost 600 signatures. It may even be up since the last time I looked. So I think that's an indication of the community's outcry in terms of losing that church and that memory garden. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. But Carol, your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. I'm Virginia Carroll from
Good evening.
1300.
Good evening.
Good evening. From 1300 Prospect Avenue. I really didn't intend to speak this evening. I don't have anything really prepared. I'm kind of speaking from the heart. I really find it so disturbing that the history and the beauty of Plainfield is being just chipped away a little at a time. And I think many of the reasons that people move here is because of the beautiful architecture. This particular church, the structure is beautiful. The carillon is amazing. I can hear it from my home. I believe there was a resident from Gresham Road who played it beautifully. Listen, I understand redevelopment, but I think that when you take an object of significance like this and destroy it, it just diminishes the beauty and the history of our town, which we'll never get back. You know, as another speaker said, there are probably other areas that could be redeveloped that are more derelict or decrepit looking. Anyway, I think all of you who have known me from other instances throughout town and the history of the town probably understand where I'm coming from. I'm a real proponent of saving as much of the history and the look of Old Plainfield as we can while we make it better. And that's all I have to say. I hope you consider it.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you. Janet, your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Janet Kulik, 1035 Hillside Avenue in Plainfield.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing me. I'll be brief. I also am opposed to anything happening to Grace Church. If it would be helpful for this body to make up its mind, I'm the one who wrote the grant in 2012 to get the money from the state to understand what the repair needs were for Grace to bring it up to full code. I can tell you the building is not ready to fall down at all. And if it would be useful to your organization to see the plans, the diagrams, all done by a very reputable architect, the cost broken out by immediate need, middle range, long-term need, I would be happy to help whomever that person might be. But that was a grant from the state of New Jersey, completely paid for by the state. And I think I have probably the only copy left of it, but if it would be helpful, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. Mr. Lee, your name and address for the record, and if you would unmute yourself. Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, my name's John Lee. I am at 1112 Evergreen here in Plainfield. I'm also opposed to seeing Grace Church destroyed. I don't have a lot to add to what's been said, except that as I was listening, several of the people are past residents of Plainfield, and I wanted to make it clear that they're not the only ones who are concerned about that. I've been in the city here for over 27 years, and as a resident, this concerns me. I do believe in repurposing older buildings rather than destroying them and replacing them. And before I came to Plainfield, I had lived in Brooklyn, where there were a couple of churches that were beyond their use as religious buildings, but they weren't destroyed, they weren't torn down, they were turned into apartments inside of the church, really amazing apartments actually, inside of the church itself, so that the building was retained, the look of the neighborhood was retained, and there was not suddenly something in the middle of an old brownstone neighborhood there that was totally out of place. And I do believe very strongly in repurposing buildings instead of destroying them. And I just wanted to make sure you knew it was people who live here as well as people who used to live here and have moved away.
I'm sorry, I was muted. CB, your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Sherry Bullock, 1060 Central Avenue, Plainfield.
And your comment or question?
So I'm deeply disturbed that with all the development going on, that the city would try to go after a historical church. When you drive around Plainfield at night, there's hardly any place to park. They keep putting apartments. Some apartment buildings, developers make promises to have a certain number of parking spaces. And like the Quinn, they were allowed to have a CO. I think there's 6 or 8 parking spots short. Front Street was supposed to have a rooftop garden. You know, developers make a lot of promises and then they don't properly build the apartments. There's not enough parking. And before you know it, the beautiful architecture is destroyed. If you look at the apartments that went up, there's no beautiful architecture to them. They're the same in Hoboken, Jersey City, you know, Weehawken, Orange. They're all flat, brick, ugly apartment buildings. They have no character to them. They don't fit the city of Plainfield. And quite frankly, people moved to Plainfield to have trees and green grass and open space. They didn't come here to live in a Hoboken or Jersey City atmosphere. And for the thought that you guys in City Hall would even think to go after demolishing a church to put apartments up so developers can make a buck is just sinful, you know, and I'm really disgusted that this is even on the agenda. You know, I'm really saddened by that whoever was in the planning department would even think about doing something like that. And that's it.
Thank you. Victor Thomas. Name and address for the record, please. You're muted, Mr. Thomas. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, got it. Oh, okay, here we go. Unmute.
Good evening. Good evening. Your name
Good
and
evening.
address for
How
the
are you?
record, please. I'm good, thank you.
My name is Victor Thomas. The address is 1017 Madison Avenue since 1969. I represent the First Park Baptist Church and Evergreen Cemetery that's in Plainfield. And okay, so we're at the Evergreen Cemetery is on Plainfield Avenue. A few years ago, just before COVID, before COVID, Plainfield had an initiative more or less for years we'd actually clean our cemetery with a youth group from Grace, and we'd actually work with the city of Plainfield. The city would send us a truck, and along those lines, they would help us. But then under this administration, we were told personally by the mayor that, no, we're not going to do that. You're a private industry. I was like, this is a church. It cost us $8,000.
Mr. Thomas? Is anyone other than myself having a problem hearing Mr. Thomas?
Looks
Somebody
like
say
he's having
something.
technical difficulties on his audio.
Okay.
I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Thomas?
am I good now?
Yes, you are, sir. Go right ahead.
Okay, great. I'm sorry if I don't know if I should start over, but I represent my name is Victor Thomas. I'm 1017 Madison Avenue. I represent the Evergreen Cemetery. I'm part of the First Park Baptist Church at 315 West 7th Street. A few years ago, the city, I'm not going to say reneged, but they suddenly stopped taking care of. We had a partnership for years where we would bring all the garbage that was dumped to the front of the curb, and then the city would take it away. The mayor told me personally, he said that those days are over. We're not going to do that anymore. From that statement, I suddenly said, well, the city is no longer behind us. It's not long an unofficial where we're going to preserve the history of Plainfield. In the cemetery, which I maintain, the Stells, the Randolphs, for those of you that are from Plainfield, you know these names because they're the names of the streets that go throughout our city. So we're maintaining this cemetery it's all volunteers from the Grace youth group that used to come and help us out. So it's going to be, now from what I've investigated, to remove a grave, if there's no correspondence within 50 years, you cannot remove a grave. So any developer that suddenly wants to do this, there's steps that I'm sure eminent domain of the city's a powerful agency, but to remove graves in a city where these are the forefathers of us it's unthinkable. But I mean, what I just wanted to make a comment to say that First Park Baptist Church and the Evergreen Cemetery will be wholeheartedly behind we're going to stand together. Unlike the city stood with us when it was time to clean these cemeteries, we're going to stand together and we're going to actually do everything we can to stop this redevelopment of nonstop apartment buildings that are put up everywhere. And it's just everywhere and anywhere to disgrace the city. I've been in Plainfield within 10 minutes of that place since 1969. This is my home. This is where I raised my children, my grandchildren. So, I mean, just for the city council, when we have a long memory at First Park, so whichever way the city goes, our memory is long and our vote is strong. Not to make anything outside of the lines of a very organized meeting, which I don't mean in any way, but I do mean emphatically that I'm not an archivist because I run the archive at Plainfield, know all the history. Remember when it was actually right across the street, it was Scott Struggs was an ice cream parlor. You could actually have at a counter. And it's just so that the history of Plainfield has to be preserved. It has to be looked at in a certain manner. It cannot just be looked at in dollars and cents. You can't just come along and say, it'll make us a few more dollars if we do this. If that's the case, why don't we just put asphalt over everything and call it a day? If that's the case, let's stop partnering with certain agencies in the town and say, we're here because the black and white of the dollars and cents that says this makes money and this does not. We won't partner with the cemetery. We won't partner with the mental health agencies. We'll just say, no, well, this is the law and that's it. This is not the way a city behaves. Deep roots in a city is what preserves the city. The different stories of people living in different places. So we're vehemently opposed with this and whatever churches that we can gather together and have long memories and long voting power.
Council President, the speaker's time is up.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Mr. Thomas, thank you so much for your comments, sir.
And Council President, I just want to note that we only have 3 more minutes for public comments.
Mr. Ken Jones, your name and address, and Mr. Jones will be our final call for public comment. Your name and address for the record, please, Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, can you unmute yourself, please? Good evening. Mr. Jones, your name and address for the record, please. Mr. Jones. Okay, maybe Mr. Jones can come back toward our session at the end and give his comments. We're going to move right along. Kay Lorenzo will be our last comment. Your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Christian Lawrenson, and I live at 308 West 8th Street.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm also new to Plainfield, and I just wanted to second everything that's been said thus far about Grace Church. My husband and I recently moved to Plainfield from Manhattan, and the reason we chose Plainfield over the many, many commuter towns surrounding New York City is the historic character of this town. With the current housing market and people now being able to work from home, Plainfield has amazing potential for revitalization. We have the bones here, we have this amazing architecture, and people aren't moving to a suburb to be surrounded by apartment buildings. They're trying to get away from that. And Grace Church is part of these bones of the city that make it special. I think when we start destroying this amazing architecture and replacing it with apartment buildings that could very easily be put on other sites, you're removing what makes this town special. It's what made us and many others choose this city. Since we moved here, we've heard a lot about the mistakes that were made in the 70s and 60s regarding Plainfield's architectural gems. And it breaks my heart to see that some of these mistakes are currently being repeated. These buildings, they don't make them like this anymore. They're just not being created. And once they're gone, they're gone. I would love to see this building repurposed for the community. And I think it would be great if the council could take that into consideration. Thank you.
You're welcome, Ms. Lorenzo. Thank you for your comment. Motion to close public comment.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstaining? Motion carries. Public comment is now closed. I am going to ask Director Jackson, and I'll also ask our mayor, beginning with the mayor first.
Council President, wouldn't we normally do that when we get to the resolution?
We will do it now.
So we're going to vote on this resolution now? Is that what you're
No, we're not voting on it now, but I will let them make a comment because so many.
Mr. President, I appreciate that. And I would like to respond to some of the things that were said and then ask Director Jackson to provide some factual information. First, I will respond to the speaker by the name of Mr. Thomas, who indicated that I said we will not clean anything from the curb that might be placed there by anyone regarding the cemetery on Plainfield Avenue. If he is representing that I said city employees or city resources will not be used to clean up a private cemetery, then he is correct, because we can't use city employees, city resources to clean up a private cemetery. If Mr. Thomas can get some volunteers or nonprofits to clean the cemetery and bring the debris to the curb, the city will remove the debris from the curb. So that's how I would respond to what was stated. Regarding the larger issue, let me just say in no uncertain terms that this administration, and I don't know where the rumor got its currency from, but this administration will not in any way support the destruction of an historic institution such as Grace Episcopal Church. I believe it was Mr. Shaw and Mr. Lee who both used the term repurpose. And I think that's a very important word. I am sure that the speakers who we heard from would not want to see that very historic institution boarded up and left in a state that would cause it to deteriorate. So I want to be very clear. We would want to see the historic features of that building retain regardless of what use it is put to. We will not support the demolition, and there hasn't been any discussion with my administration about demolishing Grace Church. So I don't know where that came from. As Winston Churchill once said, a lie can make its way around the world several times, hundreds of times, before the truth has had the opportunity to get its pants on. And so I just want to make that very clear. We have no intention, no support for anything but the retention of the historic nature of that fine historic structure. We purpose in its use. We will support that because we don't want to see it boarded up. And I will now ask Director Jackson to respond with the facts.
Good evening, everyone. As it relates to Grace Church, a few facts. Number one is Grace Church has been up for sale for several years. Grace Church is not owned by the city. The trustees who operate and represent the church have put it on the market. I have toured the facility. Again, I think the historic part of the church is a beautiful, beautiful building. Now, my staff and I have listened to various people come in and talk about Grace Church and what they could and could not do. And Bill Neerstad, who manages the Historic Preservation Commission support group, has been involved in those discussions. And when we originally created the TODD South redevelopment plan, we purposely excluded Grace Church from that. Now, it came to my attention most recently that Grace Church has been sold. As a result, what we like to put before is a plan that gives the city the opportunity to influence what happens there. Otherwise, it goes up against our regular zoning and our regular zoning board if they want to do something different than what is currently there. But under no circumstances, as the mayor has said, are historical structures going to be torn down. It is important to note that the city took on the First Unitarian Church. It was a gift to the city. The city cannot take all of the historic properties in town and program them. That would be a huge burden on our taxpayers. So what we're trying to do, I have not met the developer or a group that bought Grace Church at this point, but what we're trying to do influence what happens there. Everything else on that Cleveland Avenue in the current TODD South redevelopment plan is mixed use development. I have talked to people who were interested in Grace Church, explaining to them that they would have to come up with programming for the historical part of the church. And so I think it's important to have the facts. The city is not selling Grace Church. The city is not demolishing Grace Church, or we're not allowing Grace Church to be demolished. What we're trying to do is influence the development of that property. And so those are the facts. I've heard many times discussions with the public about historical properties that the city does not own. I think that's the most critical thing to state, is that the boards, the trustees, those are the people who have decided that they no longer can maintain those properties. It is not the city who is doing anything to Grace Church. I'm very familiar with the Tiffany stained windows. Actually, we learned some have been sold off by the church, which they're not really allowed to do. So I think it's important to have the facts. Only one person, that was Councilwoman Davis, who has reached out to me to discuss Grace Church and precisely what's happening there. So before we malign the city, I think it's important to really have the facts. The property has been sold. That's it.
Thank you, Director
Mr.
Jackson.
President, if I will add one more thing, please.
One more thing.
In terms of the sale of the Tiffany windows, we did not in any form, shape, or fashion knew about that until after the fact. And we would not have supported selling those stained glass windows.
Mr. Mayor,
And as one of the speakers said,
Mr. Mayor,
they
will you
should
say
be
that?
returned.
Will you say that again, please?
Those stained glass windows, as one of the speakers said, ought to be returned to that church. We would not have supported the sale of those Tiffany stained glass windows. We discovered it when we went on a tour of the facility.
After the fact. After
we
the
just want
fact.
to put the facts out there.
This was after the fact.
Yes, indeed. And thank you,
you.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Director Jackson, for your comments. We will move right along to our resolutions. Are there any questions on resolutions 180-22 and 181-22?
Council President, I just want to say that I commend Councilwoman Briggs Jones for bringing the resolution that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. I brought this resolution to the council last year. I'm glad to see her continuing it this year. And this year, not only did she bring the resolution, she also coupled it with programming. Unfortunately, I missed her event, but I know that it was a success. And it's important that when we talk about mental health awareness, that we break the stigma around mental health. So kudos to you, Councilwoman Briggs Jones. And I'm glad to see this resolution on here, and I fully support it. And I support the work that you're doing around mental health awareness, or mental wellness, as you call it.
I will piggyback off of that. Councilwoman Terry Briggs Jones, what we experienced on, I believe it was Thursday. Please, somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Was it Thursday? Awesome event. Well attended by the governing body. Councilwoman Davis, I believe, was out of town, but I'm pretty sure if she could have been here, she would have. It was well attended by us, including our mayor and Director Brown. So that being said, thank you again for that. Mental health is something very important, and I'm pretty sure the resources on tonight as well as Thursday were needed and will be taken advantage of. And that being said, I need a motion for 180-22 and 181.
Just quick clarification, the resolution was introduced by yourself, as it says, or by Councilwoman Briggs Jones?
Councilwoman Briggs Jones.
Oh, okay, so it's wrong over here.
I need a motion. Is there a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
All right, second, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Garza, would you please read the remaining resolutions, please?
Resolution 182-22, authorizing approval to apply and accept New Jersey Department of Highway Traffic Safety Click It or Ticket 2022 statewide campaign.
Council colleagues, are there any questions about this resolution? And if there aren't any, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Are there any abstaining? If not, motion carries.
Resolution 183-22, approving a 2-year renewal subscription for Planet Police Scheduling.
Council President, motion to combine 183-22 with R 184-22.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Mr. Clerk?
So we just approved 183 and 184, resolution
Yes,
185-22, recognizing the appointment of Battalion Chief John Reed as Deputy County Fire Coordinator.
Are there any questions?
Yes. Director Childress, can you kind of just speak to what that means for Battalion Chief to be the Deputy County Fire Coordinator and how Plainfield benefits from this appointment?
Plainfield benefits because in the past, we never had a representative from Plainfield as a county coordinator. So when the county coordinators meet to discuss resources and other things coming from the county fire-wise, we will now have someone who sits at the table.
Thank you.
I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 185-22 is approved. Mr. Clerk.
Resolution 186-22, directing the planning board to review the East Third and Richmond Street redevelopment plan.
Are there any questions, colleagues?
No.
If there are none, may I have a motion, please, and a second?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Any abstaining? Motion carries. Mr. Clerk, 187-22.
Just let the record reflect that on 186, Councilman McKenna opposed, so 6 in favor. I'm sorry, yeah, 6 in favor.
6 favor.
Resolution 187-22 in support of the location and operation of a cannabis retail business by Lady M, New Jersey LLC.
Are there any questions?
Motion to approve combine R 187-22 with R 188-22.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 188-22 and 187-22 have been approved. Mr. Clerk.
189-22, referring the previously adopted and amendment redevelopment plan for 197 city-owned in foreclosure and bankrupt properties to the planning board for a 7th assessment.
Council colleagues, are there any questions about 189-22? If there, I beg your pardon, Councilman McKenna, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go right ahead, sir.
So this is the previously adopted and endlessly amended redevelopment plan. What are we opening it back up for now? Other than we should all realize never to do this group 197 lot thing ever.
Yes, Councilman McKenna, it does predate me by several decades almost. We are opening it up for the city-owned property that's across the street from the EPAL building. It's 522-532 South Avenue. Originally, we had brought to you resolutions where several cannabis operations would have been in the EPAL building. That deal has fallen through. What this allows the developer to do is to construct a new building on city-owned land if we determine that light industrial is appropriate. So that's the problem currently, is light industrial is not allowed on that side of the street. It is allowed where the EPAL building is located. So this would allow us to continue to facilitate several cannabis cultivation and retail operations.
So it'll be just more of a permitted use, no bulk issues.
Yes, it would be a permitted use.
Well, I guess it's fitting that the 197 lot disaster would then be upended by Edward P. Paul building, but okay, thank you very much.
I need a motion and a second for 189-22.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? 189-22 is approved. Mr. Clerk.
Resolution 190-22, authorizing the planning board to conduct an area in need of redevelopment investigation of certain properties in the city of Plainfield.
Are there any questions? Do we have a motion and a second?
I have a comment, actually. So I just want to make a comment here because I think one of the big frustrations that you heard for 30 minutes of public comment, which of that 30 minutes, I'd have to guess 25 of it was Grace Church related, is that we have for quite a number of years backed into these area in need of studies because there was a developer who needed a redevelopment plan, and in order to do the redevelopment plan, we needed the area in need of. So while we always say there's no applicant, we only know of a buyer, blah, 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 all factual comments, by the way, under the letter of the law, there were always developers in the wings ready to go, which is why the bulk standards and all those things came to play. I think the most troubling thing, there were two troubling things. One, that anybody in the public thought the city was selling this property. But it was great that the city clarified that non-point. I think the big issue for me is that the city wants to do the study to protect that property from the zoning board, who is made up of citizens of Plainfield who are appointed by the mayor or mayors, depending on the overlap, and approved by council members. So we want to take it out of the hands of the citizens that were appointed for that role to protect that property from these evildoers. And we want to technically, what we just said is we're going to spot zone that thing, which we don't spot zone. So we're going to spot zone it to protect it from the evil zoning people. I think the reality is let it go to the zoning board and then let all the people that want to fight for that appear before the zoning board instead of going down this road, because I can tell you, I don't have a lot of trust in this. And the reason I don't have trust in it is that I haven't seen an area need of study that didn't have a developer or a plan already in the background. So unfortunately, that's the situation the administration has created by doing that consistently. And I think there's so many other properties over there that this could go. I think you ought to let this fight it out in front of the zoning board. And if the citizens line up and the zoning board votes against a plan down the line, then guess what? It's on the zoning board and it's on the citizens that went and fought the fight, not doing it back end routine.
Thank you, Councilman McKenna. We need a motion.
Council President,
Okay.
go ahead, Councilwoman Davis.
Thank you. So I have more of a comment than a question. When we talk about redevelopment, one thing we always talk about is the cost of blight in the city and the cost to the city to have buildings that are underutilized and not fully developed or not being used to their purpose. What I'm glad about today is that the administration did clarify that this is a transaction with the church. The church is looking to sell this property. And we know that multiple things can be true at one point in time, right? We know that it can be true that this is great architecture, right? But it also can be true that if the church is to lose this property or not sell this property, or we take it to the zoning board, and because we go through so many zoning board meetings, a deal falls through, we now have another building that is blighted. We now have another building that is now a beacon of homelessness or squatters or vagrancy or everything else in the city, in an area of the city where we already have a lot of that. And I hear residents saying, oh, we don't want the church to be torn down, or we don't want this to happen, or we don't want that to happen. But the administration has already assured us that that's not going to happen, right? That we're going to, this building is going to be repurposed. But if the church cannot sustain it, what we do not want is for it to go to the zoning board. We go through multiple zoning board meetings. The church wraps up multiple zoning board bills for then nothing to happen. And then we have another building where homeless people are just camped out. I think we have to take that into consideration, take into consideration what happens to the area around it, as well as what residents are saying. And we heard from a couple of residents, but I also heard from a lot of people who no longer live in Plainfield who have problems with that. But I didn't really hear from a lot of Plainfield residents who were saying, you know, hey, I'm totally against this. We heard from a couple, absolutely. But what about the area around Grace Church, right? I live not too far from Grace Church. So I already know what's in that area. I already know what type of vagrancy we have going on there. And my concern for the people who live right here in this area, for the people who actually come down here more than just once a year for maybe a concert or something, is what happens if we allow this building to either not have anything done to it, for the church to ultimately lose the building, and then we have a bigger problem on our hands.
Thank you, Councilwoman Davis. Thank you,
Councilman
Councilman McKenna.
McKenna. Real quick comment.
Councilman McKenna,
I certainly appreciate
Councilman McKenna
points, and they're very good points. No, this is, we have combined meetings now, so we have to have some argument and debate while we do this, because we don't have our agenda.
Councilman McKenna.
And I want to just make a point, Council President.
Point of order.
And that is that we have development that's already approved in that area. So I don't think that we should let the tail wag the dog and just automatically assume doom and gloom, because the church already sold this. It's sold.
I understand, and when we talk about dogs and cats, we'll talk about that, but I need a motion to move on this 190-22. Is there a motion, please?
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Any abstaining?
Council Clerk, can you tell me who I'm against?
Okay, Councilman McKenna.
I didn't hear.
Any opposed? Who second?
Hockaday.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining?
Opposed.
Opposed. Okay. Motion carries.
Council President, if I could just, could I be heard for 1 second, Council President?
Mr. Mancello, please.
If I could just remind just all council members that under Robert's rules, that all speakers, even council members, have to seek the approval of the chair, meaning the council president, to speak on any item. So I understand that's Council President. I think that's what you were trying to achieve in the last colloquy with Councilman McKenna, but all speakers must be recognized by the chair before they speak. Thank you.
And also your comments, Councilman McKenna and Councilwoman Davis, are appreciated, and no way in form of fashion would I disrespect you, but my job is to move along with the meeting and hear your comments as well. So please don't take offense to that. And we're going to move right along. Mr. Clerk, please.
Resolution 191-22, authorizing the hiring of Barton, Ross and Partner LLC.
Are there any questions? Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Mr. Clerk, 192-22.
Council President, motion to combine R 192-22 with all the way through R 198-22.
Is there a second?
Didn't hear that second.
Wait, can you repeat
Oh,
that?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I just meant to go down to 194-22. Apologies.
So-
I didn't want to go to the next department.
192 to 194.
192 to 194.
192 to 194.
Exactly. That's what I said.
Second.
Is all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Mr. Clerk, please carry on.
Resolution 195-22, urging the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs to revoke the residential healthcare facility license to the Plainfield Park Hotel.
Are there any questions?
Yes.
Councilwoman Ashley
What
Davis.
happens to the residents of the Park Hotel if this license is revoked? So ultimately, what is the consequence if this happens?
The 11th.
No, that would be me.
Oh, okay. Director Brown?
Yes.
I know we discussed this earlier in the week. That's why I yield the floor.
Well, if she wants to answer, I'm more than comfortable.
Somebody just answer.
So what would happen is, provided that the process is accepted by DCA, they accept to look into the case and it proceeds to the revoke of the license, the state would be responsible for rehousing those individuals.
Thank you. I think that's fine. I think, but my concern is, has this happened before, and has the state been successful in rehousing these individuals?
So I know of one instance where this has happened, and it was done, and it was done successfully as far as I know. In any process, of course, there are bumps. So I would imagine they may have had some bumps along the way, but from what I understand, it was successfully done.
Thank you. I think this is important to know, especially when we talk about Mental Health Awareness Month, and we talk about the Park Hotel. It is a sore spot for a lot of people in the community. It is a beacon of, let me not say beacon, but it is where a lot of vagrancy resides in that area of the city. But I think that they're still residents of the city, even if we don't always agree with their actions. And I think that we have to handle this with care. So we send this resolution to the Department of Community Affairs. What can we then do as elected officials to ensure that this process is done and it's done properly, and we get the outcome that we're looking for while also treating the people who live there with dignity and respect.
So from the outset, we would not have had to do this request had the facility been managed well. In the resolution are several instances where it was not managed well. And some of those instances were basic instances of not caring for the residents. This really is about taking care of the residents. To some, it may be that we're trying to move those individuals because they have mental health. No, we're trying to make sure that these residents or these individuals are taken care of. We can certainly go through the resolution and look at some of those instances, particularly around police and policing of the institution. When we look at medical care, when we look at basic care within the institution, such as if a person is in distress, what do you do with that person in distress? That is a minimal or a minimum standard that was not met. If you look at water and the right to water and healthy, clean water, that the residents have that right, regardless of who they are, they did not have that right met. And so we're looking at moral issues, we're looking at health issues, we're looking at issues where individuals who we claim as residents of Plainfield were not taken care of. And so how long do we allow this to happen? And at what point do we say, let's take some action? I mean, if we look at this institution, it's been about 30 years, 10 in particular, last 10 that have been kind of disturbing. The resident or the individual came on and said she worked with the institution. That name doesn't seem familiar to me because the picture that I took on the door is a totally different name. So perhaps they're connected and she will talk to that after this. But I wouldn't herald that as a success. I was certainly a little disturbed that she said what's going on at the hotel is a success, because indeed it is questionable. Now, when and if, because I want to put it on the table that DCA has to opt to take this. If they don't take it, it remains the same, right? If they do take it, there's a whole process that's laid off. It is not next month, the doors close. The company that is running it has the right to appeal. There'll be several appeals, which is the democratic way. And we have to see how that happens. At the worst, nothing happens, right? And then we have this institution where individuals, and at no fault of their own, are causing a situation in our community where students are scared to walk from the high school, where individuals who are store owners are losing business and may indeed close because customers will not come in that building because they feel threatened. I mean, if we don't take an action as a municipality, then what will be done? 30 years is unacceptable. 30 years of us being held hostage to a company that is not doing what they're supposed to is absolutely terrible. Now, what can the municipal government do? Certainly at the end of the resolution, the clerk will send this to everyone who's listed in the resolution. And if you want to call those individuals, if you want to appeal to those individuals, certainly that's your right, and I encourage it. Because at the end of the day, we want this to go correctly. At no point do I want anyone on the council to think that we want those bumps, we want those blips. No, we want this process to go as smoothly as possible. And it has to, because these are people's lives on the line.
Mr. President.
Mr. Mayor.
I think Director Brown laid it out very well, but I must add that in terms of one of the comments that was made by the nonprofit at 305 West 7th, who has been doing a great job of providing services to the Park Hotel. This is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I must state that we are in no way, this is not an attack on those with mental health challenges. Much to the contrary, we believe that the occupants of the Park Hotel deserve to be treated better, deserve to be treated as human beings with dignity, and not to be abused in the way that they have been. And they ought to be in a facility that provides them with the support services that they need, and not the building known as the Park Hotel that does not do anything to support the residents of that building. And so this is about getting them to a better place away from the Park Hotel so that they could have access to the services that they need and be in a facility that is more caring so that they can be provided with the services. And it's not an attack on folks with mental health challenges. I want to make that very clear.
Thank you. Director Brown, thank you so much. May I have a motion, please?
Council President, I have a question for Director Brown real quick.
Yes, real quick,
And
please.
I appreciate the fact that the mayor made that clarification because that is the reality. My question, and maybe I could build off of Councilwoman Davis's comment earlier where she started to use the word beacon. That location is a beacon for what is wrong with how we manage mental health. And it has had issues for years that get worse and sometimes just get quiet for a little while, but they never get better. What we know about these issues because the state has had to go and deal with them at some point or another. They have a license, they get inspected. What makes us think that our resolution to encourage them to do their job is going to be effective?
Well, there was one instances that I know of that this happened. It's while it's not a usual instance, it is something that municipalities have that they can request. I think that if we don't do anything, Councilman, then we will have pretty much the same.
No, I want to do something. What I'm kind of asking is if this gets ignored, then do we have other options? And maybe I'm on the Brady Bunch scale. I'm looking at the gentleman above you who is Corporation Counsel.
So was that question for me or for Corporation Counsel?
I'm looking at Mr. Minchello above you. I'm asking Mr. Minchello if this resolution, which is really the epitome, and not the epitome, it's an example of honoring, a mental health month. It's a resolution just saying we would like you to look at revoking this license. If this doesn't work and those individuals continue to get the poor treatment that they're getting there, what is the city's next opportunity to do something if this doesn't work?
Well, obviously, we'd have to reassess. I mean, I can't, as I said on this call, give you a plan of attack on that with regard to the next steps. We'd obviously have to regroup and figure out. It's a state licensed entity. So it's not like we have the ability laterally to stop them from operating. Our best efforts, and I think that's what Director Brown is doing, is to encourage the state to take a closer look at this license and to see whether it should operate at all. Beyond that, we would have to regroup and figure out our next steps. I don't think I can give you a plan as we sit here tonight.
All right, well, let's hope we don't have to do that.
And to not do anything, it would be a huge mistake. I need a motion for 195-22, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Mr. Clerk.
Resolution 196-22, authorizing the submission and acceptance of a grant from the New Jersey Department of Health for the Childhood-Led Program.
Council President, motion to combine 196-22 through 198-22.
Is there a second on Councilman McKenna?
Second. Yeah.
All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Mr. Clerk, 199-22.
Resolution 199-22, awarding a contract to Comcast Corporation.
Are there any questions? Do I have a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? If not, motion carries. Mr. Clerk?
Councilman McKenna, did I hear you say you abstained or abstained?
Opposed.
Opposed. Okay, so that's 6 in favor, 1 opposed.
6 and 1.
Resolution 200-22, authorizing the use, design media for advertising services along the New Jersey Transit rails.
Council colleagues, any questions on 200-22? If none, can I have a motion and a second, please?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining?
Opposed.
So we have 6 for it and 1 opposed. Motion approved. We now go to introduction of ordinances on the first reading. Clerk, will you please begin with MC 2022-23 by title? Thank you.
MC 2022-23 is an ordinance amending the schedule of salaries and wages adopted pursuant to Article 14, Chapter 11 of the Municipal Code of the City of Plainfield, New Jersey, 1971. This is a salary amendment, the United Service Workers Union Local 255.
Are there any questions from the council? I'll entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance on first reading. And is there a second?
Second.
Clerk, may I have a roll call, please?
Council members Briggs Jones,
Yes.
Davis. I believe Councilwoman Davis had to leave the meeting. Councilman Hockaday,
Yes.
Councilman McKenna,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mills Ransom,
Yes.
Vice President McCray,
Yes.
President Good.
Yes.
6 in favor. This ordinance has been adopted on first reading.
Proceed with MC 2022-24.
MC 2022-24 is an ordinance amending the schedule of salaries and wages adopted pursuant to Article 14, Chapter 11 of the Municipal Code of the City of Plainfield, New Jersey, 1971. This is a salary amendment for the Plainfield Municipal Managers Association, PMMA.
Are there any questions from the council? I'm going to entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance on the first reading.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Clerk, may I have a roll call, please, for this?
Council members Briggs Jones,
Yes.
Hockaday,
Yes.
McKenna,
Yes.
Mills Ransom,
Yes.
Vice President McCray,
Yes.
Council President Good.
Yes, sir.
That is unanimous. This ordinance has been adopted on first reading. We now come to ordinance MC 2022-25, an ordinance amending Article 4, Chapter 13, the making of excavations and openings in streets and public places for the city of Plainfield.
Are there any questions? I'm going to entertain a motion to adopt this ordinance on the first reading, and I'm going to need a second. A motion and a second. Is there a second, please? I will second. Okay. Mr. Clerk, may I have roll call? It was second by Councilwoman Mills Ransom. I need a roll call.
Briggs Jones,
Yes.
Councilman Hockaday,
Yes.
McKenna,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mills Ransom,
Yes.
Vice President McCray,
Yes.
Council President Good.
Yes.
It is unanimous. This ordinance has been adopted on first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We now move to general comments. A total of 60 minutes has been allocated for all public comments to be presented tonight. Each speaker will be allotted 5 minutes. If you wish to be heard, hit the hand icon to be recognized and you will be unmuted. And once you have been unmuted, give your address and the name for the record. Again, you've been allotted 5 minutes. The floor is now open. Manuela Garcia, your name again and the address for the record.
Hello, Manuela Garcia. My address is from United Family and Children's Society on Plainfield. It's a nonprofit that works with Park Hotel. We're a nonprofit since 1877 out of Plainfield. We've been working in Plainfield at our address since 1978. We've owned the property since then. We're right down the block from from Park Hotel. We currently do mental health counseling for adults and children and families. We also do the social service aspect, the small component with the Park Hotel. We are not the owners or the operator. However, we do our best to work with those 180 people that live there with either a mental illness, substance abuse problem, or just been living there for the last 20 to 30 years. I have a long history working in the field of mental health, and I want to report that at United Family, we do work with these residents. And I do think that in my many years of experience in local government, I'm not surprised that there were a lot of violations at the Park Hotel. I venture to say that the vast majority of similar places, no matter the size, would have violations if inspected by those same agencies on any given day. It's the nature of the beast. Corners get cut, rules are overlooked, or at times are unknown. There are just so many regulations. The citations that are referenced are old, probably have been corrected, and are in relative terms or in a blip. That doesn't mean that there haven't been any other violations, but to seek revocation of the license for the cited violations is really a stretch. I want to let you know that I've been part of several different boarding homes, residential healthcare facilities being shut down, not in such a big number, 180 residents with mental illnesses and substance abuse problems. We're not talking about homeless people. We're talking about residents of Plainfield, New Jersey, who live in the city of Plainfield and want to live in the city of Plainfield. They don't want to move. They have their family members also live in Plainfield. So I just want to remind you that in closing, that we are able to help. So I am available to help Plainfield. And that's why I want to make Plainfield great again with the service, the social services that we want to have in the community. Like Miss Beverly Moore Clark had reported, we want to get some of the services back because there is a lot of homeless people in the area, but it's not the Park Hotel residents. It's other people in the community. So I would be more than happy to assist with this matter. Thank you for your time and have a good evening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
You just allowed me to unmute. This is Bernadette Miller.
Good evening, Ms. Miller.
Good evening. Thank you for recognizing me again.
Your name and
again,
address again for the record.
Yes,
please.
Bernadette Miller, living in Nashville, Tennessee, with a family that lived in Plainfield for over 50 years. I want to say that I'm very glad to hear that the city is interested in preserving these outstanding examples of architecture, and that there may be some things afoot of which you are not aware. So I've been speaking with some members of the church, and they have been discussing, although from what I understand, there is not an in-writing plan yet, but they have been discussing digging up that memory garden and moving it to St. Mark's. So I just want you to be aware of that. And hopefully that's something that you all will also not allow to happen. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Ms. Miller, have a good evening.
Thank you, you too.
CB, your name and address again for the record, please.
Hi, it's Cheryl Bullock, 1060 Central Avenue.
Hello again.
I'd like to speak about downtown Plainfield. You know, you keep building all these apartments here and telling people, you know, it's a welcoming city to come to, but yet when you have downtown Plainfield with dirty streets and dirty sidewalks, it's very shameful. When I was doing beautification, we had planters that were supposed to be replaced. There was money in the budget to be replaced. And at one time there was a $10,000 to $20,000 beautification budget to put those planters back. And the sidewalks are falling apart from when they did the fake brick paving. The DPW was supposed to get a machine to help get the bubble gum because the new kind of concrete sidewalk they put in 10, 15 years ago wasn't a good quality. So every time somebody spit gum in there, it just kind of cooked it and stained it and just never comes out. But also it seems to be the Board of Health. I've complained several times to the Board of Health over 3 years, as a matter of fact, that they picked and choose who had screen doors on their restaurants. It seems to be that if you were a certain ethnic background, you didn't have to put a screen on your door and leave your door open for the flies, or you could set your food outside. But other groups were made to put screen doors on. And I'd like to know why the Board of Health still allows people to set their food outside, sell their food outside in open air, and don't make the restaurants put screen doors on when they leave their main doors open so that the flies and bugs can get in. And I think that the lack of parking is a deterrent for people to stop and shop downtown. You know, some of the stores are doing a very good job of keeping their windows clean. And at one time I had somebody from Bloomingdale's and Macy's both come to demonstrate how to dress windows instead of use windows as storage boxes. And, you know, downtown just looks dirty. I mean, the PMUA, I can't blame the PMUA on everything, but they're in charge of the garbage cans down there, and they seem to empty them, but they leave a bunch of garbage at the bottom. There's weeds growing out every one of the tree grates. I mean, it looks, it's just awful. You know, I mean, downtown needs to be cleaned up. And the mayor took over the SID, but the SID has not been doing its job down there. You know, people are setting banners out on the sidewalk, doing whatever the hell they want. We used to have certain days for sidewalk sales, certain days for events. You couldn't just do it whenever you wanted. And there should be banners up for all seasons. When I was doing beautifications, we had things set up winter, spring, summer, and fall, and now there's nothing up there. There's not welcome to Plainfield. There, you know, pretty flower banners, American flag banners. I don't know where the American flags went to. But I really do think that since the SID was created, it was supposed to be proactive with some of the merchants. And I know that not all the merchants want to take time to come to meetings because they're all like, you know, single family owned and don't have a lot of employees. And so they don't have time to close their stores to have meetings. But, you know, if we passed out flyers at one time with the rules, you can't have more than a third of your windows covered. You can't have all those lights in the windows. You can't be storing your Tide boxes and Downy bottles in the window. You know, I mean, there needs to be some of that done again to remind these people. There's a lady down there at 102 Watchung that every day she puts rice and bird seed out to feed the pigeons. So all the sidewalks are covered with bird crap because she feeds the pigeons every day. You call the Board of Health and they don't go down there and do anything about it. You've got some of those stores playing music, setting their speakers outside. Everybody's playing a different song downtown. If it was like the old days with music, like what they call elevator music for the whole city of downtown Plainfield, maybe it wouldn't be so bad, but everybody's got a different tune and station with their speakers outside, you know? And when you go down on the weekend, you can hear music from Shea Marie all the way from City Hall, all the way down to North Plainfield. There's nobody, you know, monitoring the loud noises. So the people that live in the apartments down there are disturbed because nobody seems to give a damn about what's going on downtown Plainfield. So I'd like to see the SID, you know, decorate down there, spend the money that they're supposed to spend on there and clean up Plainfield. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening. Robin Bright, your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Council President. And
good evening, Ms. Bright.
Robin Bright, 1282 Marion Avenue. And all this talk about the Park Hotel and Mental Health Month, I was just wondering where are we at with the medical part of the Millenberg site? Has there been any movement? Do we have any medical facilities that have committed to moving there? And do we know what type of medical use will be there? It appears that it's completed, all the renovation is done, and I've been seeing a lot of activity over there. That's all I had.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bright. I appreciate your comments. Ms. Ferrone, your name and address again for the record, please. And you are muted.
Hi, okay, I'm Elizabeth Ferrone from New York,
Yes.
New York. And
Yes.
I wanted to correct a few things. First of all, Grace Church has not really tried to sell the church to another church, right? It's never been listed. And they haven't reached out to organizations that could have connected them to grants to apply for. Now they had over $600,000, so they could have done this. They're not like the struggling churches that are like getting down to nothing, right? They had over $600,000 to be able to hire people to do that, and they did not do it, okay? And I have the draft contract that got us all afraid. So don't gaslight us and say that we made things up, because I can read to you from the sale contract what it said, right? Under contingencies. This contract is contingent upon the buyer obtaining at the buyer's sole cost and expense all the government approvals needed to demolish existing buildings on the property and to construct a multifamily development of not less than 175 residential fair markets. Now, I don't know if this is the person that has signed the contract and now is negotiating with you guys. I'd like you to kind of explain that more, but let me get back to other stuff about the church. They have I'm sorry, a broker suggested to them that they sell those Tiffany windows, right? They weren't sold at auction. They could have got a lot more money for them, but that doesn't matter because they should never have been sold to begin with. They did not get the permission of church members. They were supposed to get a vote. Their state law says that the church members are supposed to vote, and they never got a vote. And they never got a vote to sell the church either. No vote on the windows, no vote on the church. They had a town hall and they told the members what they were to do. And actually, the diocese told them to get permission from the members, and they never did. Now, Valerie, stop smirking at me because what I'm telling you is true, okay? Because I know Jason Algio. He's my brother-in-law, and he's fucked things up, okay? Now, anyway, so what have you guys done to get these windows back, right? They've been missing since December. That's the first ones were taken out in December of 2020, right? Now, I want you to know that windows have been taken out of 2 churches in Elizabeth. So 3 valuable sets of Tiffany windows from 3 different churches in Union County have been sold by Episcopal churches in Union County. So as far as I'm concerned, there's a scam going on here, and this broker is in the middle of it. All right. And I think we're all victims of it. You guys need to hire a lawyer to get them back. I mean, there was a back and forth between the lawyer from the diocese and the planning and HPC. And then all of a sudden, there's nothing happening. Is there something happening that I'm not aware of? You know, the second set were taken, I believe, in the summer. They were taken out in the summer, last summer. They've been ordered to return them, and all the diocese has done is argue. And the diocese refuses to return our phone calls. Why would they refuse to return our calls? They could have called us and corrected us and said, oh, we're not doing what we planned on doing in this contract. Don't worry, the buildings aren't going to be demolished, you know, but not a peep, you know? So we're not crazy, and we're not spreading rumors. We're making sure that things aren't destroyed like things have been destroyed that weren't protected. Things were destroyed on the Muhlenberg property that weren't protected. The only freestanding operating room in the country that really had a lot of historical significance. And it was torn down. And then that beautiful building that has those beautiful pillars in front are, you know, being torn down now because it's not historically protected. So I don't think I'm crazy for organizing people and getting them involved. In fact, you should be commending us for what we do because we care. You know, we care. And the church was never, the church has experienced a lot of abuse in the past 9 years, ever since Mother Carolyn left. The first minister that was there was accused of sexually abusing a vulnerable young man. Yes, you can look that up, Valerie. That was Father Gideon. It's on the record, you know, and I'm glad you're on the record for saying you're trying to get the Tiffany windows back, but I want to know how we're going to get those Tiffany windows back. What's going to be done? All right. Any response?
Ms. Ferroni, thank you so much for your comment. We appreciate your input. Are there any more for public comment? With there being none, motion to close public. Mary, thanks for joining us. Your name and address for the record, please.
How you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, sir.
Mr. Hood, 139 East 7th Street.
Yes.
In regards to this Grace Church matter, I just want to make a few quick points.
Sure, go right ahead.
That I don't believe has been mentioned yet. So everybody listening and support of this matter, I think it would be wise if it hasn't already been done to create some kind of crowdfunding, like GoFundMe page where people in support of this matter can donate monies, whether it's, you know, a small $5 or $500 or $50,000, whatever it may be. So if that hasn't been done, I would encourage somebody to do it. I would be willing to do it myself, but I think that would be wise. And so everybody in support of this matter can share their thoughts and donate monies to contribute to kind of whatever upkeep the church needs for restoration processes and all of that. So that's that. One or two other points. As somebody mentioned earlier, there are much more derelict properties in town. And like I mentioned, 2 blocks away on 5th and Cleveland is a real prime development real estate opportunity, in my opinion. It's an old abandoned garage auto body shop and an old Cadillac dealership. And it's 1 or 2 blocks from the train station. So any development there, I think, would be really ideal, because with the addition of the church to some new apartments in that location, that would just add to the neighborhood. Residents at that new building would have a place to worship, a safe haven, if you will. So that's my thought on that. I think that would be a much better opportunity. I'm not sure if the developer is aware of that, but he ought to look into it. He or she ought to look into it, because it's a much better opportunity. And my last point is there are a lot of new construction in Plainfield. There's at least, I've counted at least 6 new large apartment buildings being built. There's a huge one on multiple on South Avenue that are being built, which are very nice. There's one on South 2nd Street, which has been built. So there's a lot of new housing opportunities. And I don't think Grace Church should be knocked down and redeveloped into an austere residential apartment complex, which we have many of. Yeah, so those are my thoughts, and I thank you for hearing me on this very important matter. And I hope we have the support of everyone and all of our listeners here, whether you still live in Plainfield or you've moved away. I thank you, and I encourage your support. So thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Have a good evening, and thank you. Miss Alisa Peralto, good evening. Your name and address for the record. I hope I didn't do your name injustice.
Just a little bit, but it's okay. Hello,
evening.
everyone. Good evening. My name is Yalisa Peralta. I've been a resident here in Plainfield, raised and born here. I have gone to Barlow Elementary School, Maxon Middle School, and Barack Obama Green Charter High School. I am 25 years old. So, I'm probably one of the youngest ones that are here to speak in regards to a couple of things that are a bit concerning in regards to what's going on in a city that has truly built me as a person that I am today. And I'm a very big advocate for my community. One of my concerns is also in regards to the Grace Church. Grace Church is where I had my graduation. Grace Church is where I had my performing arts musicals hosted in. I attended Barack Obama Green Charter High School. And, definitely hearing the concerns from everyone, I definitely agree that, something definitely has to be done, because it just being there, is not bringing any purpose to anyone. Either it be for residential homes. I know that there are many people who are on wait lists. Just want to also state that I do work for legal aid, not in Union County, but in other counties that is close in the area. And there are many, many, many people that are waitlisted for housing with rent increase, and also in regards to the pandemic, a lot of people, rent has increased tremendously now that they're looking for housing to live. But then again, with the church, obviously, This is a church that a lot of people have attended, have gone to it. I've been in it. I have had families there to come support me, like I stated, for my graduation, for my musical, and there's a lot of history within it. So ultimately, you know, obviously it's up to those who make the decision on either or, because either or, if it's to be repurposed or to be made into development for housing, is going to be benefiting the community as a whole. I also want to state, definitely forgot my address. I live in 544 East 2nd Street. East 2nd Street last year, I can honestly say that I have made 3 calls to the police for how many car accidents that have been occurring on this street. I have lived here my whole life at the same address, and there has been a lot of car accidents that happen on the street. I don't know if maybe we can add a speed limit or have officer stationed maybe in the corner to watch you know, the speed of how people come. But a lot of the times we are often, I agree with the noise complaint, waking up with, you know, muffler sounds, loud music, 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. I also live with individuals who are older, and it definitely is a bit disturbing. So, you know, just advocating for my community, and that's, you know, ultimately why I wanted to show up. This would be my first council meeting that I ever showed up, just because I hear the concern from those around me that, you know, hopefully within regards to everything that's going on and, you know, what everyone wants to change within, you know, Plainfield, that ultimately it leads to a community where everyone would want to stay and or have people that live in out suburban city areas would want to come in. I did attend college in Jersey City, and although there have been many times that I wanted to stay in Jersey City, Plainfield will forever always be my home, and that is why I'm still here.
Ms. Peralta, can I have that address again, just for the area? Just
544
Mhm.
East 2nd Street.
Okay, thank you. Thank
No
you.
problem. Thank you.
Have a good night. Thanks for your comments.
Thank you, you too.
Mhm. Karen Flanagan, your name and address for the record, please.
Karen Flanagan, representing United Family at 305 West 7th Street. I just have a general comment and sort of a question. Should the situation at the Park Hotel not be remediated, or if the license would be repealed and the residents relocated, since that block is scheduled as non-condemnable but in need of renovation, what is going to happen with that property then? Is this going to be more housing once again, and we're going to be back in the same situation like we have at Grace? And making a comment about that and what the long-term plans would be for that area, since that was part of the city council meeting 2 months ago, that whole area in there.
Thank you so much for your comment and your question. Jeff, your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. It's Jeff Spellman, 1151 Gresham Road.
Good evening, Jeff.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to speak a little bit about Grace Church as well. I've a long personal connection in Grace, and that I attended for quite some years. And my husband and I were married in Grace Church, and I've been the carillioner playing the historic Carolina 47 bells up in a tower, which is one of just 4 in New Jersey. And Grace was a very special place in town. And I think, unfortunately, in the last prior years, there's been a struggle of the leadership there, or lack of leadership, and unfortunately, a lack of leadership from the New Jersey diocese, so that we've gotten to the situation where we are now without what I feel has been a constructive and positive brainstorming discussion of what would be the best use for the sanctuary, and maybe how that could work with developer plans and other things like that. And what I would encourage you as council people, besides the normal motion and process of redevelopment and planning, is if someplace there could be a discussion about the use of that building that might be either compatible with plans or understanding the different things that might need a discussion that's separate from just a normal planning board. But maybe there's a way to have a creative community discussion that can take that great asset of a church, find maybe a new purpose that is also compatible with either development or other things there. So I would just encourage you to see if there's some sort of forum we could do that to have a better conversation that's been had so far. Thank you very much. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Spellman. It doesn't appear to be anyone else wanting to participate. We have one more. ASTEFEL. Your name and address for the record, please. Your name and address with someone with an AOL email address.
I can't connect.
Your name and address for the record, please. Are you there?
April Steffel, formerly of Plainfield. Yes, I
Ms.
am.
Steffel, good evening. How are you? Your comment, please.
I'm fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, April, I can hear you.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
April, I can hear you.
I have a few things to dispute. Okay, I have a few things to dispute regarding Grace Church. When I was the liaison for the Historic Preservation Commission, I was asked to supply Grace Episcopal Church with the National Register nominations in May of 2021. At that time, the windows were not removed from the church, and in fact, were still there. We were told that they were thinking about removing them, and they were going to then put in some kind of replica. The city never acted upon it. They never came to the Historic Preservation Committee, so the HPC could in fact never act upon the removal of the windows. My fear is that if the city does not follow the letter of law and get the HPC involved in this, and that in fact the developer is allowed to do whatever they want, they will destroy the integrity of that building. They've already degraded it by the removal of the windows. And trust me, there are more windows in that place that are going to be sold off. I have been in contact with the Gilman Museum in San Joaquin, Texas, and they have those windows. They're going to be on display at some point, the ones that were already taken at Grace Church. So I really think that the citizens should have a lot of input when it comes to the redeveloper at the HPC. This is not going to be able to be a one project or one meeting deal when they go before the HPC and everything is expected to get done in one meeting, because it won't. Just like they wanted so many of the buildings that the HPC did protect to get everything so these buildings could be adaptively reused and also blend in with the character of the city. So unless you're very careful about what you're doing, you're not going to get a very good project. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your comment. Doesn't appear we have any more for public comment. That being said, motion to close public comment, please.
So move.
Is there a second? I will second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Public comment is officially closed. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our presenter this evening for mental health awareness, Ms. Beverly Moore Clark, for her presentation on tonight. I want to thank my colleagues for participating in a very productive meeting. Mayor, I want to thank you for your comment. I'm pretty sure many will do appreciate the fact that City of Plainfield is not in the business of destroying churches. Director Brown, we appreciate your information in pertaining to one of our items on our agenda concerning the Park Hotel. And is anyone on here that would like to comment on any of the questions or comments that were made?
I would, Council President.
Go right ahead, Director Jackson. Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Ferrone, hopefully you're still on the call. I'd like you to send me a copy of the contract between the buyer and the seller. And I would say to you that because it's written in a contract does not necessarily mean that it's enforceable. Again, whoever has purchased a church or entered into this contract has not contacted me. I have talked to many others about Grace Church who are interested in it. And so I think they perhaps realize the hurdles that would be involved. So again, Ms. Ferrone, I encourage you to send me the contract, and all of my information is on the website, and call me. There is only so much that the city can do related to private transactions. I keep repeating that same thing over and over. We've gone through this with other properties. It is a private sales transaction. Yes, we do have a Historic Preservation Commission. They are there to support and ensure that historical properties are being preserved. But make no mistake about it, the enforcement arm related to any of this in terms of historical properties rests with the city, not the HPC, not anyone else. It rests with the city as it relates to the zoning officer and our boards. So I do encourage you to reach out to me. You're saying that you have information, and you have information that I don't have. And I can tell you, if I read that contract, what is enforceable and what isn't on the part of the buyer. So just because they wrote it in a contract between them does not mean that that is something that's enforceable. That's it. And thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Director Jackson. That being said, motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
We are adjourned. Everyone have a good night.
Good night.